All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the July IT Council meeting. John's got a great presentation prepared for us today, so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So this morning I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more technical than general. Not sure where everyone stands in terms of what people's interests are. So again, I'll ask you folks as a group. I am interested in your ideas. I do a lot of presentations, so I can talk about most things IT. So if you have ideas for presentations or what you'd like to see, rather than just me figuring something out and throwing it up here, let me know. Today, I'm going to take a little tour about something near and dear to my heart, which is PowerShell, and kind of talk about some of the things PowerShell can give you, especially when you're got repetitive tasks or you're looking to put together some kind of report from even the separate systems, and how it kind of works a bit. So let's take a look real quick, like. Oh yeah, I added this slide today. The Every year Microsoft has a partner conference called Microsoft Inspire. Believe it or not, Microsoft Inspire went on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. And so we sat in on some of the presentations and keynote, and really what Inspire is all about is every year Microsoft kind of discloses to partners what they're up to, what they've been working on, and what they'll continue working on. So it kind of gives me at least an overview of what's going to be happening in the Microsoft world for the next couple of years. Which is, quite a long time in our industry, since things change so fast. This year, there wasn't a lot to talk about because it was really just two initials, and those two initials are AI. AI stands, of course, for artificial intelligence, and if you haven't been berated by it yet, this is the next big bubble. What I've read and heard about is that this is the next .com bubble, is going to be the AI bubble. So we're going to see a multitude of companies being formed and generated all around AI. One of the keynote demonstrations that we got to saw was generative AI in healthcare with Epic, which I'm sure some of your organizations are using. And I left the link down there to give you, so that when you receive the PDF, you can kind of log on and take a look at it. What it was was a brief demonstration of what Epic is doing with their new, what they call DAX, DAX system. And basically, it's pretty cool as a patient. So I get to see doctors quite often. But anyway, as a patient, you would go in to see the doctor. The doctor would come in with their phone, and on the phone is the DAX system, and they would interact with you. And DAX would actually record patient doctor, everything that's said. Which isn't anything. It's kind of speech to text recognition. That's not really AI. But then what happens is it takes that script that the doctor and patient had and turns it into the clinical notes that they need to do. And what they're saying is that this provides the doctor with, they said something crazy to me, that like every 10 minutes of talking to a patient generates about 8 minutes of follow-up report that they have, clinical reporting that they have to do. So, to me, that's why I guess doctors are always, I never realized, I just thought they were sitting around, watching YouTube videos, but I guess they're actually typing up notes most of their life when they're not in with the patient. So that was interesting to me that this product now will take that and create it, and then using the speech to text things allow the doctor to edit it with voice rather than having to type it, or they can of course connect to a terminal and type it in. So it's kind of interesting just in one case, and there were several other things that they're doing, but this is coming in the Epic system. And they it was kind of cool. So if you get a chance, pull up that video on YouTube, or you can search for Microsoft Inspire and Epic in on the YouTube thing if you don't want to type out all that stuff. So anyway, that's kind of good. So today I wanted to talk more technical, and what I mean by more technical is in the previous sessions that I had, it was kind of like a show and tell kind of product show and tell versus anything kind of diving into the product itself. But I figure with PowerShell, since it comes on basically every workstation and every server today, we might as well give a little light to the PowerShell system itself. PowerShell's if you don't know what it is, it's a scripting language. It also provides for a framework for doing things, consistently and multiple times. So anything that you have to do, over and over again, it kind of makes sense to what we call script it, and therefore you click on a script and have it do the tasks rather than you having to do it manually. And since it's built into every Windows product, Windows servers and workstations, it's free, so it comes with the product. The current shipping version is something called 5.1. There's also a version 7.3, and why the difference is that 5.1 runs on Windows only. Windows and Windows servers and workstations. 7.3 is kind of platform independent. It'll run on those Apple product things, whatever those are. I'm a big Microsoft fan, so and it'll also run on Androids and things like that. So basically 7.3 is a little bit different than the 5.1 version, has different stuff available to it, and because it's cross-platform is a little bit different. But since 5.1 is built into all the machines, I'll be talking about that today. Most of the stuff pretty much everything in 5.1 works in 7. But not everything that's in 7 will work in 5.1. So that's kind of how it works. So to me, if you're going to become a real PowerShell fan, or you probably will want to upgrade and put 7 on your system. In my presentations, you'll see these iScreen pages, which I'll quickly move away from. Really, this is just additional information so that when you get the PDF, you can kind of read more about it. Again, I can talk about PowerShell for hours and weeks and days and years. So an hour presentation or so, 45-minute presentation is not going to go anywhere near enough, but I'm hoping to give you a little taste of things that it can do and pique maybe your interest. So what it's good for, well, to me, anything you have to do over and over, automation is really good. You can actually create scripts that will do remote administration for you. For example, you can create a tool that'll change users' passwords without having to, for instance, climb onto the server and use the Active Directory tools that way. So other things that are there. Microsoft talks about one of its benefits being desired state configuration, or DSC, which is, if you do it in a script, it's the same thing every time. And so therefore the state that you get when you run it once is the same state. So if you're configuring like a PC or something and you use a script to do it, you'll get the same state, if you will, every time. So what PowerShell works off of are things called commandlets, and commandlets is the main kind of, if you will, requests that we make to PowerShell to get something out of it. Everything in PowerShell becomes an object. If you've seen any kind of programming before, you hear about object-oriented programming. But really what an object is, to me, is an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so if you think of an Excel spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet has a column and it has rows. So to me, the items in a object are the rows, and the columns are the keywords that indicate what it is, if you will. So if you kind of think of an object as being a spreadsheet, then you'll get the right idea. And then there's something called pipelining. What's kind of interesting about PowerShell is it allows you to run one command that produces output, and then what they call pipe that output into as input, if you will, into another command. So you can kind of chain like the output from one command to the input to the next command, to the output of that command to the input of the next command, etc. And that's called pipelining. So it allows you to do certain things that you'll see. We have a couple of examples of pipelining coming up. And then finally, it allows you to use variables, which just are the representation of some sort of data that you can manipulate later on. So commandlets are the basic building blocks of PowerShell. And how they work is really, they use a verb, a dash, and then a noun to as their naming conventions. And you can see a bunch of them there. So we have commandlets like get service. And get service will show you all the services running on a system, or actually all the services on a system. And some of the, if you will, columns are things like, is it running, or is it, stopped, or is it, disabled, that type of thing. So get, to me, get is a great commandlet, or a great verb for command, because it's read only. So you can always feel safe using a get. That's never going to change anything. So that's kind of the nice thing about these, is even if you start moving from services to processes to Active Directory, if you're using gets, you're never going to change anything. On the other hand, if you're using sets, that is changing something. So you can set the service to, run on startup, and then that service would be running forever. Start and stop mean exactly that. They're going to start that service and stop that service. And then remove is the famous delete command. So gets are easy and good. You can always use them. The rest of them, make sure you kind of know what you're doing before you issue any of those other ones, because they will make changes. And obviously, if you need to make those changes, then you'll use those commands. When you look at PowerShell, and you use a get help, I used on my system there, if you look at the very top line, I said get help on get help. So basically, when you see something like this, you'll see that the get help syntax there talks about you issue get help, and that's required to actually run this command, which kind of makes sense. And then anything you see in square brackets means it's optional. So I can run get help by itself. And if you noticed, I did get help up there, but I could have just said get help and got the same thing, believe it or not. But anyway, these are things that you can put on that line to show you, just kind of show you what any command might have in it and that type of thing. So things that are fairly common are, get help and then put the name in there. So, what command do you want to get help with is really what the name parameter is all about. And then paths are usually a string, a character string of pointing to some place on a file system or on a server or something like that. So you can see these commands, and anytime you see a new command to you that you want to learn about, you can start with get help and the actual command, and it will talk to you about that. If you're brand new to PowerShell, trust me, there's quite easy ways to start learning it, and we'll explore some of that later as we get through all this definition things. Again, PowerShell treats everything as an object. Commandlets produce output in the form of an object itself, and an object is always known as a key value pair. So, for instance, a object has kind of, to me, the column, which would be first name, and then the row, which would be John, and then the column last name, and the row, along that same row would be Deedle, and then the email is the column and the John Deedle at ctcomp.com there. So to me, that's kind of the way I look at it. So when you issue a command, expect to get back some sort of key value pair, the key being the column in a spreadsheet and the values being the values of those keys, and those would be rows if you have multiple of them. You may only have one, but that's kind of where it comes into play. So for instance, if I issue a command called get service and I hit enter, it will give me this, if you will, key value pairs where the keys are status, name, and display name. And then the values are things like stopped, running, ALG, application layer, gateway service, etc. So, and if you notice, it's very table-like. It looks like it's in a table when we issued this command. So as simple as that, you can run this on your own computer and see every service that's running on your computer and whether it's running, stopped, etc. However, I wanted to talk a little bit about pipelining. So if you remember from that previous screen, it looked like a table. But if we use the pipeline function, and the pipeline function is that straight line up and down, if you will, on the keyboard, it's often over the enter key, is where that straight line is. It's called a pipe. So the get service, then pipe, and then we're saying format that as a list rather than a table, because the output of get service generally shows up by default as a table. We can change it to show in a list view. And so that when we do that, you'll see that there's more actual information than when we just did get service that we can see. So if you remembered from before, the get service in that table had like 3 columns. Well, you can see that the actual get service has about 9 different categories per each one. Can it be shut down? Can it stop? Can it pause? Does it depend on any services, and what the status is? So by using the list view, we can see that there are more information, and then you can actually do other things with them. So again, just to show you, if we get service and format as a table, you'll notice that it returns just the 3 most important things there by default. Again, you can make changes to these commands to change what you see and how you see them. But for now, that's kind of just showing you what a pipeline does. So I want to take a quick look at managing processes within PowerShell. So if you want to see what, things you have running, processes that you have running on your system, you can use the get process. And again, that returns the object in a table view. So we already know we can format that and make it a list. But you can see that I have a couple of AI things running on my system, several some code running on my system, connected to some hosts there, that type of stuff. So with get process, for instance, I can say get process. I want to see anything that starts with an E as a process name. And you'll notice in this case that I have Excel and Explorer running on my system. So if I wanted to get rid of Excel, I could say stop the process of Excel. And when I hit enter and I do a get process E, you'll notice it's gone, and you'll notice Excel went away from my screen as well. So these are things that you can do with PowerShell, just a brief kind of look. But PowerShell is a lot more than that. It's sometimes you can write more than a 1 or even 3 or 4 lines of code. You can write hundreds of lines of code and make things automated. And you can do that with variables, conditions, loops, and something called advanced programming interfaces, or APIs. And with that in hand, you can create reports and scripts to process information. And when we start writing scripts, because scripts tend to be more than a one-liner, we tend to use a editor. The editor of choice for all things PowerShell, or for people writing PowerShell, is Visual Studio Code. And the reason I say that is because it's from Microsoft and it's free. So again, PowerShell's free and the editor is free. No need to pay for it. Microsoft gives it to you for free. So you can go out and find Visual Studio Code, download it, and run your scripts. The one thing that you need to do is, if you're going to play around with this, is when this is a look at Visual Studio Code on the graphic, and if you notice on the left, there's an extension button. It's got the 4 squares in it, 1 square to the side there. That's the extension button. If you click on that and then you search the extensions up at the top and type PowerShell in, you'll find PowerShell. And then you install it. And at that point, VS Code understands PowerShell. And what I mean by that is it can help you when you're writing your code. When you're typing in your code, you can see you can hit the parameters and see what parameters are available, that type of thing. So that's something that you'd want to do right off the bat if you're running the PowerShell extension. VS Code requires .NET 4.8, so you may need to install .NET 4.8 on your system, and that's again free from Microsoft. So you can do that, and it's of course we're talking a Windows box at this point. The other thing that you'll want to do is scripts are kind of great in some, if you talk to me, I say they're great, but I'm a good guy. Scripts can also be done to write malicious code. And so Microsoft and most vendors do not recommend like turning on scripts like with no security capabilities. So basically what you have to do is to make sure that your scripts, that when you run them, any foreign scripts that you might get from outside, which is called remote, is at least signed. In this way, you know who wrote it, and you can accept it. This way, if a bad guy sneaks a script onto your machine and you're running scripts, if it's not remotely signed, then it won't run by default. And that's important. Okay. So again, by default, you can't even run scripts. So one of the things that you'll want to do is to go into PowerShell, and the first thing after you go into PowerShell, if you want to run scripts, is you need to set the execution policy to remote sign. If you if you do that and you're running the PowerShell as administrator, you can set it for anyone on that machine. If you don't want to do that, if you want to just run it for yourself, then you set the execution for the current user to remote signed, and then it will just set it for yourself as your username. Um, so there kind of some security there that you'll need to, if you will, unlock to run PowerShell on a local machine. A little talk about, I don't know if you guys have ever done any kind of coding or programming, but PowerShell comes complete with all of the standard kind of variables, conditions, loops that you may want to have. And a variable basically is used to save objects to reuse them later on. You can do a get variable to see all the variables that are in play, and whatnot. When you create a variable, basically you just say, the variable begins with a $sign. So when you put a $sign and then any text you want, like $X, for instance, you would call that the X variable after that. So, but a variable doesn't have to just be one letter. It could actually be a full name. So you can say like dollar, purchase order number, and then that would become a variable that you can use. And how you use it is typically you declare the variable, say dollar purchase order number, and then you'd say equals, and then whatever that equals. Okay. So for instance, in general, you can look at the screen here and you can see that I'm doing a few things. Line 1 there says clear host, and that basically will, if you will, erase the screen or clear the screen on your terminal screen. Down here, this is the bottom corner here, bottom left corner of my screen is the terminal screen. So if you notice, I set a variable called $A, and it's equal to 1. A $B, I say 23, and then $C equals A plus B, if you will. And then I write that to the host. So that's what it's saying, write host $C. And that's why I get a 24 here. Then I set a red, because I was doing this around 4th of July. $A is red, $B is white, and $C is blue. And if you're using text, you enclose your text in quotes. And you'll notice that I put a space after the red, white, but not after the blue. So I set this WO here I call that my write out variable, right? So I'm writing this out. So I write the host and do a write out. And that then produced this line, red, white, and blue. Couple things. If you notice, case is not sensitive. So I made it a $WO small, but when I printed it out WO large. So in the case of variables, case, it doesn't matter. But the system, if you save these files, it will retain the case. So what a lot of programming does, if you will, is when you're doing things and you have multiple words that you want to use in it, you often capitalize the first letter of each word and then mash them all together. This way you don't need underscores or spaces or any of that kind of fun things to work with. Here we're using a function or a commandlet called getDate, and it does exactly what you might expect. So this gets the date, and $A equals getDate. So when I write $A out, you'll notice that I wrote 7-Eleven at whatever time it was. Then you can do things like $A, oops, hit the wrong key. $A is equal to $A. This in math wouldn't make any sense, but in programming, you have to think of this as not a mathematical equal sign. What this says is this variable I want to set to whatever's on this side. And if you notice, I'm using the same exact variable. So I'm saying and I keep hitting my space button. But anyway, what this is saying is $A I want to set it to $A, what it was, plus add 7 days to that. So if you notice when I write that out, it's 7 days after 7/11 or 7/18. And then I add, in the next line, I say write host this time and add days minus 14. So I subtract 14 days from that and I get the 4th of July. So these are things you can do with variables. So you can manipulate them, you can change them, and then you could use them later on. And then what this becomes, if you notice, is this is a 17-line script to produce that output. Loops are fun. Basically, a loop will repeat something quite often over and over again. So if you, but I'm showing ifs. Okay, so I thought I was going into loops. So ifs, an if is a condition. So basically what you do with an if is you put something in between parentheses. And if it's true, it will execute the stuff in between the squiggly brackets. Okay, so what this is saying is if $I is greater than 10, then I want to write that's a big number. And then you'll see down below, if else, that number is less than 10. So when I run this script, it will compare I to see if it's greater than 10, which it isn't. So it won't execute the lines after it. And then it will then run the else portion of the shell. So this is kind of how you can manipulate things, decide a condition is true or false, and if it's true, execute it, and if it's false, execute the other block. Needless to say is if it executed the true portion, it would skip the else portion, and technically if there were more lines, it would go from line 5 down to line 10, if you will, skipping that other block. This is a loop. So basically, in this case, what you do is you set kind of what I call a counter value, which is a variable. In this case, I'm using $I, and you set it in the first position here. So you're going to say, I'm going to start with I being 1, and then I'm going to compare it to a condition. So I want to run the loop if I is less than or equal to 10. And then over here, this is an increment counter, which means increment I by 1. So this says start at 1 and go up by 1 until I is equal to 10. So you'll notice when we run this, we run it through less than or equal to 10. So we're going to go from 1 to 10, and then we'll be done. So when you see we run it, we get 10 of the same things and end the loop. So that's, kind of a standard loop that you may see. Because we use objects, we can actually say, for instance, we can go through, and we did this one before, right? So we said get process and return that into processes. Then we can create a loop for each process in the processes that we came back. This is something that I do. Variables names don't really matter, but I often pluralize a set of objects so that when I do my for each, I can singular it, if you will, in English. But this could be X here. So I could say for each process in X, $X. The PowerShell doesn't care, but this is just something that I do when I'm coding, is I typically make it plural and then singular when I run the for each loop. So inside the for each loop, you work with the singular process. So what I'm doing here is simply writing out the process name, .name, and it gives me all the names of the processes that I called. And why is it only showing the Veeam there? Because when I did that, I said get process name Veeam, not all the processes. So that's why it's only showing stuff that starts with Veeam. Um, if I said something like AI, Microsoft's big on it. AI is going to be a term you hear all the time these days. So you'll note that I use AI now with PowerShell quite a bit. It's not integrated in yet with like VS Code. My guess is that someday it will be, but there is a commercially available Chat GPT. And when I say commercially, you can pay money for this or you can use it for free. If you use it for free, you're limited into the number of calls that you do per minute to this or, that type of thing. But it's usually fine for, for doing PowerShell things with it. And that's Chat GPT. So Chat GPT does not come from Microsoft per se. Microsoft did have stuff to do with this. They're part of the group, but this is an open AI. So if you go to chat.openai.com, you can get to Chat GPT and ask it things. It's quite interesting in how it works. There are limitations. And one big limitation is that it only knows about 2021 and back. And why I say that's a limitation in the world of computing, remember, every 6 months is major for us. So often modules, PowerShell, all these kinds of things are updated, new commands, new exciting things, commands are replaced. But quite often, ChatGPT, even though it's limited to 2021, especially when you're learning PowerShell, can really help you. It's a natural language AI. So you type a message in and it then does what you ask. So for instance, if you notice the bottom now, I typed in create a PowerShell, create a PowerShell script to query all my Active Directory users. And basically what ChatGPT will do is say, okay, sure, no problem. And go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna have to share again here my screen, but let me just get Chat GPT up. I'll share my screen. And it's not, I mean, pretty fast. And so at this point, the system or the AI itself went out and decided that looks like a good script to them. So it builds in even a little copy code for you. Then, not sure, can you guys see this VS Code screen or no? Forget.
Yes.
You can. Okay. I'll just pick any one. So I just opened up my VS Code and I'm creating a new PS1 file, and I just pasted in what ChatGPT said. So now I'll try to run it. The interesting thing I find with PowerShell, besides the fact that it's taken forever to load my module here, is the fact that,
Hey, John,
yep,
we're still seeing like the overall Chat GPT window with your PowerShell in the middle.
oh, gotcha. Yeah, this is a limitation on me, to be honest. I'm not a regular Zoom user. So,
There we
so
go.
do you see
Yep.
it? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So basically, what you missed was I created a new file called chat PS1, and then all I did was, because I had it copied into my clipboard, I Control V and pasted it in, and then I chose to click this button over here, which is run, and so now it's actually running, and I'm going to stop it, but you can actually see that what it's doing is it's writing out the username, the first name, the last name, the display name of my folks in Active Directory. Not only that, it's giving the last login time. And this is a well-known Active Directory kind of number that you can convert that number into a date and time, believe it or not. Not that this does it, but and it even shows if the account is enabled, or not, that type of stuff. So for instance, that guy's not enabled. So, that's kind of a quick and dirty look with using AI, all right, in um, PowerShell. So you can kind of talk to Chat GPT, tell it what thing you want, and have it build it for you. And by the more information, or the longer, if you will, after you say create a PowerShell script, the more detail you give it, the more detailed kind of reporting it may give back to you. I use this extensively to create reports and different reports for my company. One very interesting add-on to the PowerShell world is a thing called Import Excel, and with Import Excel, you can literally do pipes right out to create an Excel sheet. So, there's a lot that can go on in this particular product. Let me go back to my finishing up slide. So hopefully that gave you a little look into PowerShell itself. So one of the things that I did want to mention, and we'll give you some time if you have questions, although generally I kind of like, go too quick or whatever. But what we are asking is, this is a brand new council for LeadingAge Connecticut. We've only had 3 meetings so far. I know some of you said, that I just heard of it this week. Well, that's great and welcome. one of the things that will happen after this meeting is Lexi Meadows from CT Comp will reach out to you because we have Yeti mugs for everyone. Picture there. But and we'll give these out to anyone joining the council as they join. So if you can get some more folks that you know that are, part of LeadingAge and part of IT or would even be interested in IT kind of things, that's something that I'm requesting of you guys to do, generate some more members, and see if we can get the attendance, getting larger and larger. It's only helpful for you guys when we give you time to share ideas and things like that. The next webinar, we do have them on Thursdays of each month, the fourth Thursday, I believe we picked. And so the next one is on August 17th. One of the things that I really would enjoy is if you guys could provide input as to topics or what you'd like to hear me talk about, or if you'd prefer not to and you'd rather give a presentation. I'm all for anything. So I can give it. Just give me a topic. I can do the research and talk about it. Obviously, it's something that CT Comp deals in. I can probably talk about it right off my chest, if you will. So let me know. So with that, I thank you all. If I'm going to open it up for you guys to ask questions or to talk amongst yourselves at this point.
John, thanks. Pretty technical stuff, and in terms of the PowerShell, it's a lot of YouTube time for me.
Yep.
And just yesterday, I was trying to figure out. This will lead to a question in a second, but I was trying to incorporate mail tips and run a PowerShell script to increase the size of the audience of a distribution group to more than the default 25.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten that to work yet, by the way, but I might end up reaching out. But my question is, like, how do you know at what level do you run the PowerShell commands? Like, what I wasn't sure was, should I be logging into the mail server if I'm running a PowerShell script for something to do with the exchange? But then sometimes I have to do an entropy session and load the domain controller. So I don't really know at what level or if I should be on a specific server. And then also what's confusing is there's like PowerShell 86, there's PowerShell ISE, there's PowerShell this, there's like 5 different PowerShells that show up, and I'm like, well, which one am I supposed to run here? But anyway, and then lastly, what's the recovery options? Because I'm always afraid that after I hit enter, I'm screwed.
Exactly. A good backup is always something I recommend. You're dealing with tools that are very raw. They can do great damage if you do an oops. So, it's the standard kind of thing, test, test, test. So one of the things I always, recommend is, so what I do is I basically go through, and before I do a set or a remove, I comment that out. And I just said, okay, here I go, and I debug everything around it and leave that one for last, if you will, right? So the actual commit, danger, I always do at the end as the last step of the debugging, and leave it commented until you get everything else is good. All right, so now, read it over one more time, especially when you're dealing with things like, your servers, Active Directory, any of that. The only remedy, in my opinion, sometimes will be a backup. So make sure your backups are good, that kind of thing. Usually your backup should be good because,
yeah, well, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other things, throw out all of those things you just said about what you should use and get VS Code. All right. What it is briefly is PowerShell itself, the word PowerShell for Windows or PowerShell is just a raw thing. There's no editing capabilities. PowerShell ISE is the editor that comes with it, with your Windows operating system. Download VS Code, and then all that stuff can go away and just work in VS Code. Another, perhaps hour or two of YouTube videos on how PowerShell works, VS Code works, but it is definitely the coding of choice to run scripts. So I assume you're probably working with I don't know how you're working. Are you using like Notepad or something, Notepad plus to edit, and then, or are you using ISE?
Yeah, I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's half the time I don't know what I'm using. I just
Yep.
get syntax errors and I just put a work order into CT Comp after 3 hours of time wasted. So anyway,
Okay.
yeah. So the other thing is, if I can just provide maybe just some feedback. And I know you've been asking John for agenda items, and maybe this
Yep.
is for Andrea too. I haven't been good at providing that. The technical stuff you provide is valuable, with the cybersecurity stuff and all the stuff you've been doing. I missed the last month. So I wonder if sort of at the council level, we're all in the same industry and space, right? We all serve the same customer base, if you will, in terms of population and age. And we have a lot of pain points, right? We have a lot of barriers. Our customers have a lot of barriers, whether it comes with aging or an impairment, cognitive, whatever it might be. And on for our team members, right, there's challenges with workflow and inefficiencies, automation, not using AI, just all kinds of stuff that could make us better and make us better to serve the people to serve our customers, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is there an opportunity to kind of how do we leverage technology to make us better, to make our customers better, to improve quality of life, to improve the experience at work. And there's a lot of, I think technology can lend to that. Maybe I don't know how or have all the answers, but I just can't help but wonder if that's the conversation at the council level to help us with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Something
if
to
you
think
guys,
about, right?
yeah, if you guys have a current pain point, for instance, we can always, take a look at that or try to, research that and perhaps come up with, some things we can find. Like I said, to me, one of the things that we as CT Comp do with our customers or for our customers is, listen to them, and some of our services that we now provide is based on listening to customers, what their pain point is, figuring out, hey, there's not a lot of good stuff there, so maybe we should do it to help them, right? So no one liked looking at backup logs, but it's really critical. So we ended up coming up with a backup managed service and those types of things. So
yeah,
if you guys have those kinds of pain points, certainly send me an email or send Andrea an email, and she'll forward it on. But yeah, any of that kind of stuff that you guys want to talk about, that's great. Because again, that's part of what this is, in my opinion, all about. You've got a group of IT professionals, maybe somebody's doing it, and why not have them talk about it? I mean, and or you talk to them. So, and again, we don't necessarily need to have a presentation every month. We just thought that would be, something good. But, if time to time you guys wanted to not have a presentation and just chat, kind of do a forum amongst yourself, that's fine with me.
Yeah, because in the end, I think there's going to be a technological thing to help us, right? Where you guys could help. For example, like what comes to mind is like communication's a big problem everywhere, right? Nobody just it's just an issue, right? So sort of the thinking we have here now is how do we really, how do we create more self-service features and utilize AI into like chat bots into Teams, right? For more self-help things, and maybe for our customer base as well. How do we leverage technology for more self-service instead of, you know, calling the front desk, putting a work order, waiting for somebody to show up, things like that.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
that kind of automation is something that we're really starting to look at, and especially a plug-in for ChatGPT into Teams is what we're looking at now too. So anyway, that's just some ideas.
That was announced yesterday.
Yeah.
By the way, Microsoft announced that. So you'll see that becoming available soon.
Great.
And if you look at the next webinar, kind of is that Teams talk.
Yeah, so I'll throw some bullets, just some things in my head to Andrea, just see if it's worthwhile to pursue here at this council and go from there. But thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Paul, Scott, anything?
Actually, really interested in the I'd love to see the Chat GPT in Teams, and you know, to Raphael's point, I mean, the more we could do a self-service, I mean, some of the tickets we get are not only repetitive, but they're, you know, there should be some sort of skill level when we hire, and that's what when you run into. I mean, you get Outlook questions that are silly, you get Excel questions that are silly. It would be great to have somebody just be able to pop that into Teams, because we're a team shop now.
Okay.
Just be able to come up with a logical answer that they can go with.
Do you have, okay, so one of the things that Teams has is something called a bot, BOT. And bots are kind of like widgets that you program a bit. And not like coding programming, but you know, you kind of tell it what to do and where to go, look for the following keywords, that kind of stuff. So again, depending on, you know, what you want to do, with that, that's something to look into is you know, team bots. There may be a bot, or you know, I know there's like an HR team bot that people develop that help with that type of stuff. So there are those, and some of the stuff that you guys are thinking about, like I said, Microsoft just announced AI in Teams Tuesday. So you are thinking right, but you're probably a little bit ahead of the curve. But like I said, to me, I was so impressed that Microsoft worked with. Do you guys use Epic? Anybody use Epic? No.
Yeah, we don't. We
No.
No.
That's normally a little bit larger, John, like a hospital.
Yeah, well, of course, because it's Microsoft. So
yeah, it's
yeah.
unfortunate. And yeah, these EMRs, you know, they just they're competitors of each other.
Right.
We can get care coordination documents, and there's sort of that level of integration, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, Microsoft worked with Epic to develop this, but the tools that they used are going to be available to you know, to all developers. So they're saying that, you know, across the plane, EMR, you know, will develop into that platform and have some of the same things that they do. It's just funny because every year we talk about, we go to Microsoft and they talk about how great it is, and they're really involved in small businesses, you know, 2,000 servers or less, more. Is, you know, so to them, 2,000 servers is a small customer. We don't have accounts that have 2,000 users, so you know, we're a little bit smaller typically. 1,500 users, but not 2,000 servers. Nobody has. People are looking to get rid of their servers anyway. So, but yep, very good. Thank you. Anybody else have input for us at this point? Okay, well, like I said, you can use me or Andrea to send email to, and I thank you all for attending, and I turn it back to Andrea.
No, I thank everyone for attending too and for giving John this great feedback. I think it's very valuable as we help build out this IT council. And it's very generous of CTCom to do these Yeti mugs. So I think that's great. So I have everyone's email that was on the call today. So you should have meeting reminders in your calendar for all the upcoming meetings. And as I get new people to join the council, I'll be updating them with the information as well. And that's it. I guess we'll see everyone on August 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Ron. Bye-bye.